When I constructed this idea almost 20 some odd years ago, I mean, I did it out of insecurity. I had a hard time being sort of the front man of a rock band. It wasn't my thing. I'd always played in bands. It's kind of in the background, doing my thing. But when I became kind of that focal point, the idea of a concept made sense to hide like my truths inside of it. Choruses to me are the answers to the questions that are posed by the verses. And it's important to make sure that those answers are clear. At least, and that's coming from me, Mr. Complexity. Right. So when I initially constructed that song, my uncle had passed away. And it's sort of this oh God.
We're here in the Coach House Piccadilly in London, about a month and a half before Coheed And Cambria released their new album in 2025. Now, the band has many members, of course, but all of this seems to stem largely from the one man himself, in Claudio Sanchez. So I'm delighted and honored to have a chance to chat to him today about the new album and the band in general. So thank you very much for your time today, Claudio. I really appreciate it. Now, when you're approaching a new album like this new one, Father of Make Believe, do you feel any sense of the kind of responsibility to hit some of the same touch points that you'd find in other Coheed albums over the years? Or do you approach it each time with a bit of a blank canvas? What's your approach generally?
It's a little bit of everything. I mean, fear is definitely a big one. I mean, especially in the, I found that the last record, Window of the Waking Mind, was just fantastic. I loved it so much. So I was a little afraid that I couldn't follow it up. But, when I started writing this record, and some of this material is as old as Window of the Waking Mind, I just kept writing. I didn't really think about the concept. I didn't really think about, didn't have anything more, just really what I was experiencing at the time. I had experienced a lot of loss, which I had it most of my life. And in doing that and seeing people go, it posed a lot of questions that I didn't really know I was asking myself until I looked at the material in the final and told me that was the record I wanted to be. So there are moments, surely, where I will ask my producer partner, Zach Sardini, if there's anything that I'm not seeing, because I'm with this material from its inception to its finish, and I do value his objective opinion. So I will come to a point where I'm like, hey, is there anything we're missing? Whether it is sort of part of the formula of what Coheed does, or just in general, do we need to, maybe tread some new ground? But yeah, that's and he'll let me know for sure.
Is that largely from a storied context, or is that also in a musical sense? Or is there anything you haven't explored musically? Because I wonder if you feel a bit of a tug of war between story needs to go in some certain direction, and that might dictate sort of musical tone, or perhaps you think of the musical idea and you go, how do I make the story fit it within this? Is there a bit of a battle there sometimes?
Not really. I mean, for me, it's most of the time I allow my personal experience in the music to really inform what the concept is, because that's important to me. I want, when I constructed this idea almost 20 some odd years ago, I mean, I did it out of insecurity. I had a hard time being sort of the front man of a rock band. It wasn't my thing. I'd always played in bands. It's kind of in the background, doing my thing. But when I became kind of that focal point, the idea of a concept made sense to hide my truths inside of, So for me, most of the time, it's I might understand where the story is supposed to go, but I allow my personal experience to really inform the part of the record and help really motivate the characters in the story. So there is kind of a disconnect,
Well, I understand from this particular album, you're, in theory, injecting yourself into the story in a certain way you haven't before. You are the father of Make Believe. Is that the concept that's sold in this?
Right. I mean, the father of Make Believe is an interesting title. It's kind of ambiguous, right? For me, it is this brand that I've sort of given myself through time. Being the guy in a band that has this grandiose sci-fi epic. It's almost like a blessing and a curse, because as I get older and on this loss I've experienced that really kind of inspired this record, Like I've started to ask my questions of what life would be like without me or without my wife, or, what would Coheed have been had the concept not be suggested? I mean, just the kind of typical questions one would ask them. So at this sort of stage in their life.
It's a really difficult question to answer because having done it the way you've done it for 20 odd years, it's probably hard to imagine ending without that being inextricably linked to it. But have you had moments during that time when you wanted to write particular songs within the Coheed musical world without being linked to a kind of story and a way of picturing that as sort of standalone songs, but then feel like this must also need to somehow link to the archetypal story that goes with it.
Right. I mean, there was a moment where we did it without the concept at all, The Color Before the Sun. I did that in tribute to the experiences I was having before my son was born. And so that one really kind of stands out without the shield of the concept. But, most of the songs when I write them, they're coming from a very personal place. Like the albums to me mean something extremely different than the albums to those that really want to participate and exercise the concept.
Right.
But I also want to say that, like, I think that the concept is, I think that these songs really stand true on their own and really is allowed. And I think that's a big thing why we've allowed the longevity we had, or why the fans have allowed the standard and longevity, is because they do find that personal quality in the songs. So the thing that resonates with them, themselves, they see there in them. And so, yeah, I for me, it's really about the honesty. Again, I kind of lie when I create this other big piece of fiction that I can hide my life in, but it's allowed me to be honest and comfortable.
But I guess also, if you were to write from a very specific point of view and being very detailed in your own life, it might marry those songs to a certain point in time. Whereas if you relate them to a story arc, they're kind of timeless because it's a version of something that everyone feels through some kind of story.
That's it. And at some point in their life, like because again, I think about it and like every moment is a journal entry into my journey, and I think of, like, for example, like Window of the Waking Mind is really a record about parenting in sort of this like time of test, when I think of the pandemic and being a parent through it. I mean, I think everyone could sort of relate to that, any point in their life. I mean, there's always going to be a hurdle you're going to need to jump when sort of having to learn your way into that parental role. So that will always have that universal theme tied to it. Good Apollo 1, very much about like heartbreak. I mean, who's not going to experience that in their life? Yeah. So these are like the universal themes that I think really kind of project themselves through the album that feels very personal and universal to the listener. But again, the concept, it's really just kind of there if you wanted to, like, get into something wacky.
Yeah. Now, when you're approaching a set list for this band, for anyone who is interested in the story side of things, I was wondering then whether you might struggle with the placement of songs. Well, technically, in the Heartbreak Wars is a different time. If we put this song too late, does it make sense? Does that play in at all? Or just going, what makes sense sonically throughout a set?
Right. No, it doesn't. It doesn't typically when it comes time to making just a standard set. Only when we do the concert series Never Ender, where we tribute an album, does it really matter in terms of the visuals and the things that are going to accompany the experience for the audience. Outside of that, it's like, really what works sonically and makes sense for the environment that we're going into. I think that's a great thing about Coheed. Like, say if we're on a support tour and we're doing something with Primus or Tool or whoever, there's enough departments that makes any sense in what we do that we can pull we can tailor certain wardrobes to that environment, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But yeah, it's really when we do Never Enders, do the concepts really play a role.
All right. And talking about tailoring your, leaning into different sounds or different crowds, you're headlining 2,000 Trees this year. you obviously had like countless gigs throughout the years, but how do you approach a festival headliner? Because you've got a bit of a curiosity crowd with it there. Does that change your ideas for how you approach that show at all?
Um, yes and yes. Um, you know, we it really depends on the festival, right? We curate towards the festival, but we do. We want to look. We want to earn a new audience. So, I think there's a bit of I want to say anxiety, but I'm not sure that's like the correct word. But like, there's this real desire to want to and hunger to want to play in front of new audiences. That's why I sometimes really enjoy the sport bowl. It's like you get to play in front of those new audiences. It reminds me of being young and in a van, and you're really like fighting for new ground.
Yeah. Speaking of that, that was the music video for what was When You Can. That sort of like looked like a old school home video with the start of your band. Is that expressing those in the lyrics in that were put down, perhaps? But of that song, what inspired that concept for that? I mean, sort of you're in that, like helping them get.
Yeah. So Someone Who Can is just one part of a trilogy of videos that we did, and it's the finale. Blindside Sunny, Searching for Tomorrow, Someone Who Can. And so the idea of this trilogy of videos is that, Coheed is playing in the modern time, and there's this character that is snaking his way through the crowd, this ominous figure with like these emoting glasses, and he's shrouded. This is a character from the story called Blindside Sunny. He's acting sort of in this trilogy as a guardian angel. So in this one, he's just kind of appears in modern day, and he sort of exits. And in the next video, Searching for Tomorrow, which is animated, he reveals himself by taking off the shroud, and we now see Blindside, and we see the continuation of the band's performance in Searching for Tomorrow, and he ends up taking our essence and sort of we travel through these potential realities had Coheed not existed.
Right.
What would our lives have been like? And he kind of shows us that in a very surrealistic kind of fashion. And it ends with us sort of entering this white light, where we then pick up in Someone Who Can, where that white light kind of dissipates, and we're now in the past. And we have now picked up the roles of the guardian angels, and we're sort of helping our younger selves navigate the hurdles that fall before them. Blindside is still in the video. He manifests his way into it in a different sort of way, more in relics. One is like an air freshener in the van. Another is a little figurine at the soundboard where I'm doing sound for the Under Us's, and another is a painting on the back of in the wall in the VFW hall where the band's playing. So there's a few others, but yeah, it was really kind of a part of this like overall big picture little trilogy we wanted to put together, and yeah.
Do you get a bit of delight from planting these little like Easter egg details? Like someone's going to pick up on this. You're kind of waiting for them. Someone's going to message you say, "Is this?"
It's funny. No one did until I like sort of brought it up, and then like in sort of the social interaction, I started to see like, oh yeah, I saw that in this and then the connection starts to be made.
I mean, yeah, Someone Who Can is a delightful song. It's like a song for the summer. It came out in January, but it's a beautiful song. And then you've got Blindside Sunny, which is kind of like a thrash metal song. Are those choices of styles driven by concept, or these things like it's an itch you want to scratch? Like, I want to write a song like this. How do I make it work?
So they're just songs I think driven by emotion. I wrote Blindside Sunny when I was in Paris. My wife and I would be deciding to take these writing retreats. She actually ended up going to Italy, and I stayed back in Paris. Paris is actually where the initial idea of this concept was born in 1998. So I went back, and I hung out, and I wrote. And I realize now, when I look back at the time, it was like the first time I had been alone really alone. A long time, so back at the States, her, in Italy, and I'm not with my entourage, Coheed and Cambria, traveling the world. So I really got to like kind of be with myself and with my thoughts. And I wrote two songs out there. One was Blindside Sunny. The other was Mary or Mercy. And two opposite ends of the spectrum and opposite ends of the feelings that maybe I'd been going through, like while being alone. But yeah, that was just exercising a thought that I was going through. So yeah, but it's really just everything's sort of driven by emotion, and a riff will come and will inform a feeling, and then that will take me on a journey.
Are there any particular songs on the new record you're really looking forward to playing live because you think that might inject a different energy into it? I'm thinking like, was Play the Poets pretty full on?
Might kill me. Yeah. I mean, I'm open. Honestly, I'm really excited to be surprised by what songs are the ones that pull out, the physical, vibe. Like the last record. Some of those songs, they get more of an obvious reaction than maybe some of Coheed's most popular historic tunes. So I'm really excited to just kind of be surprised at what resonates.
Yeah. Talking about things that resonate, something that is so synonymously glorious, I think, within the Coheed and Cambria is there are melody hooks that you can come out with over the years. I'm thinking things like Bye Bye Beautiful was one of the first ones I was like, oh my gosh. Or I'm going to pull the trigger and Niagara Stops. And then you got like One Last Miracle. Like, when you stumble across one of these melodies, do you think this one's going to absolutely catch? Or do you need to have people tell you like, oh, this is the X, I think people are going to really feed off this?
I don't. I have really a hard time like seeing the forest through the tree, if that makes any sense. Like I do. I mean, I sit with this material for so long that at one point I'm like, I don't even know if it's any good. I asked my wife, because my wife is there. She's always there. What do you think of this? And drives her kind of nuts because I ask it a lot. I've been doing the thing that I do for so long that it's hard to be objective in the moment. And that's why I think I value my relationship with Zach so much, is that, he's somebody that really kind of breaks down those walls and, shows to me the songs in a way that, that I can't see because I've been living with it for so long, so he really helps bring that dimension. We gotta imagine, like I write these songs in a room. It's not a very big room. There's a lot of shit. Can I prove this? Yeah. All right. But it's hard. I get to really kind of be in myself, and I get to be not the characters in the story, but the character the emotion is calling for when singing the song and when delivering the song, and it's exhausting. Could be very exhausting, like getting my emotions out in this music, and by the time I'm done, it's like it's hard to like listen to the song in a sense of enjoyment. There are moments, don't get me wrong, there are moments where like I will find power in a song that will drive me to tears before even the drums are on, and I'm so glad that I found this collaborative partnership with this person that can really help magnify what I'm feeling and what's in my imagination when, sort of creating these things.
That's all very helpful, especially because in the world of creativity, you can overwork things and you can kind of add too many layers, and it's helpful to have at least someone to go like, oh, yeah, this is fine, you're on the right track, or like, oh, make the best of this.
Right. I mean, Someone Who Can, for example, that's a good example. Like, when I originally wrote that song, I wrote it as a solo effort, and it was going to be in my imagination was it's going to be this Americana, like. So it was like it's going to be like this acoustic guitar. It was acoustic guitar. I have the stand-up piano. I mic'd this room, two mics, two SM58s, right? And it was a cajon, that was the rhythm, box drum, acoustic guitar, piano, right? And when I sent all the songs to Zach, I sent 30 songs to him. I said, this is the idea of the record I have. This like maybe 15 or so. And I'm like, but there's these others, this other 50. And if you find anything that you think is really like speaks to you, because I can't see it, let me know. And his first, I think, first selection was Some of Them Can. And this was an acoustic song that was like, it's still the song, but it's like the instrumentation is different.
Right.
And he's like, maybe we can like do something with this that kind of sits in the world of a disappearing act. And I'm like, of course. Like, I value your opinion. I find my songs are safe with you. Like, I'm open to it, And, production later, we have Someone Who Can, we have now. And it's like, it's pretty bad.
It's a delightful song. It's clearly gone, I think, in my estimation. And the opening track on that album is glorious. It has like this orchestra bit. It's like there's violins, there's cello, I'm sure a horn and trumpet. It's just like, how did you put that together? Is that all done via the wonder of kind of programming little instruments at this point, or get orchestral musicians? How do you put that?
Right. So when I initially constructed that song, my uncle had passed away. And it's sort of this like, oh God. So his wife is now a widow. He's kind of young. So my grandfather sort of experienced something kind of like that, like 30 years without his wife. So this idea of leaving someone behind and became like the thing that started to make me question life, without me. All these questions, Coheed without the concept. This is the thing that really sort of gave identity to the record. And so I wanted to write a song like that, a song that kind of had that, question to it. Had I gone and my wife and son were left alone. So what I did was I grabbed this old parlor guitar, small boxy guitar, and I added a rubber hose, one that one would typically tie themselves off with. No, just kidding.
Play the guitar,
but it kind of created this like dead, mutey kind of vibe to it, very, very, very intimate, and then I started to accompany it with mellotron playing, creating a symphony with a mellotron. It's just like it's a digital version of a mellotron, but it's old samples. Beatles used them a lot. It's like an original sampler. But like when the tape would end and you press the key, the tape would end, then the sample would go away, right? But it's like it's a certain milliseconds. So anyway, that was the initial version of the song. I also used this instrument that I found in Portland called the Therovox. Therovox actually emulates an old French instrument called an Ons Martineau. Radiohead uses them a lot, I think. And it's a synthesizer that's, in order to control it, you have this like ring on a string, right? And so it creates like almost a controlled theremin sound, but it's more controlled and you could sweep through it. I used one on Black Rainbow with Atticus Ross, or a controller called the French Connection that emulated that. But that's like the sweltering, kind of spooky somberness that happens in the background. But I knew that wasn't enough. And I had this friend, this orchestrator in New York, his name's Chris Schonke. He does like musicals and things like that. He's a freaking talented thing. And that was one of the songs that I'd asked him to help kind of arrange some real elements around. Because I'm not, I don't really know music theory all that well. I wanted him to legitimize like my approach, so he added extra accompaniment to it. And yeah.
Well, it worked. It sounds absolutely like authentically earthy, orchestral. Oh, beautiful. Phrasing. Another thing that's synonymous with the Coheed sound was when I first heard your vocals, whatever it was, like 20 years ago, it really stood out from the rest. But you have put a range. You have some very low vocals that you can't put out there. But there's this sort of high belting thing that you have, which is quite exceptional. Is that your default voice, or is that something you've gone for to like try and have this high frequency thing that kind of really cuts through over the kind of heavy rocky bank?
I think it's like, I don't really know what it is. Schizophrenic, maybe?
Okay.
No. That's probably not funny. But no, when I was younger, my mom would listen to like 80s pop music, and most of the singers are female fronted, and I think Michael Jackson, and I kind of emulated those things in the car, and I think I took that with me as a singer when I became the singer in the band. Um, but uh, but my voice is naturally a little lower than that. I need to some degree. So I don't know. I think I wanted to express myself in as many ways possible when it came to my voice. Not that that's how I was thinking younger. When I was younger, I just found like when songs needed something a little more somber or lower, like I just tried to get it to be that way. And when it was needed to be screeching to I just tried. But yeah, man, it's just something that I wasn't always a singer. That's the thing is like, I was a guitar player first. Uh, so I didn't really know what my approach was going to be. So I just tried it all and it just came with it.
Nice. Speaking of your guitar work, I'm slightly in awe of guitarists like yourself and another guy called Jamie Lemon who will write quite complex guitar parts that then you have to sing over at a different rhythmic pace.
Right.
But I've seen you do like acoustic solo performances of a lot of your older songs and things, but doing all of that while singing over, how challenging is that? Or is it because you play these songs and moments so often, you can kind of, muscle memory will take care of it? How do you marry up the rhythmic differences between the vocal lines and the guitar parts?
Yeah. I don't know. It seems natural to me, but then I think of it like objectively or like from someone else's, when someone else is like, how do you do that? I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that is kind of hard. You know, I don't know. Sometimes I'll write the guitar, but like I said, I'm a guitar player first, right? So I'll write the guitar part. So typically it's music first, right? So, and then melody will just kind of come out because maybe I'm getting bored of just playing the guitar. So I started singing the melody and it just happens naturally. Or if I just write it and record it, and then I decide, like separately that I'm going to sing over it without keeping in mind that the guitar might be doing too much. I just got to figure it out, in the afternoon, like, I wrote myself into a corner there. I need to figure that out. And so I will.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of you might be able to pass some of the complex stuff to an additional guitarist. But there are moments where there's two, essentially like lead guitar parts under both. I'm like, well, you have to do one that way.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, it's, sometimes there is moments where I can delegate, but there are others where it's not possible.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I was wondering if, whether that's just something you naturally want when you're thinking like chorus, isn't it easy if you hear a guitar part you want to bring to life, or whether you think, given this body of work in the past, do people need a kind of busy lead guitar part on their chorus because that sounds like Coheed? Is that factor in at all? Is it very much you're trying to find whatever the song needs it to be?
right. I think as I get older, the more I really value like vocal lyrics and melody. And, choruses to me are the answers to the questions that are posed by the verses. And it's important to make sure that those answers are clear. At least, and that's coming from me, Mr. Complexity. Right. So for me, it's like most of the time, like I've found, and sometimes I try to break the habit, is that the choruses are very driving and very lush and allow a nice bed for the vocal to sit on. Think of a song like Shoulders, for example. Shoulders is a very busy verse, riff wise. Well, it should be. It should be kind of perplexing. You're posing a question in your verse, but the answer should be, very obvious. And I'm not saying all songs answer themselves, but that's the idea for me. So trying to make that very clear.
It's tricky. I guess it's probably endlessly entertaining for you because every song is its own puzzle to try and figure out.
Coheed. Honestly, that's when I first started learning how to write songs. That's, I think, a big reason why some of them are so long is because, again, I was learning how to write music as I was learning how to play guitar and all that stuff. It was all like happening at the same time. And I found as I would I'd write a verse and to me, what would be posed as a question would then be answered with a question. So there was like, oh, but that's not the chorus, like, or if it's the chorus, it's only chorus one because
That's now pre-chorus.
yeah, it's like it's not answered yet, and then the song then flips. You think of a song like June Song Provision, for example. It's almost like two songs in one. It's like this whole moment of time where nothing is answered, and then like the song shifts into another song where maybe my younger self thought I answered what I was trying to get across, but who knows?
Or speaking of other puzzles, I understand you've had a recent signature guitar event.
Oh, yeah.
But not just like a partner of some company that makes guitars. I understand you've been a bit DIY about this. You've helped with the design a bit. But yeah, what has that entailed for you? How have you approached creating guitar?
I honestly, like, just a lot of downtime. I was sitting on a flight to see my in-laws in Florida, and I just started collaging together this idea. Not really with, a guitar company in mind necessarily, just, what if I were to do this, what would it look like, or whatever, and I did, to utilizing pieces of other guitars that I sort of were, tributing because of my trajectory in this band. I constructed the jackhammer with some of those elements, and it tributes like the SG that I played in the van, and the Gibson Explorer E2 that I found in Cincinnati that has been with me. Like, see a lot of pictures of me and Coheed. It's with that guitar. So yeah, I just kind of collaged this thing together, and I asked my guitar tech and friend Kevin Allen. I was like, you're a luthier. Can you make this? Like, just can you make something that we can just see in the world? And so he made like a fairly working prototype, and it excited us. Played it a little bit on that tour, and then we thought, let's try to partner with a company that's got the infrastructure to make this thing happen.
Right.
And we partnered with Dunhamel out of California. And they had another two prototypes made from their custom shop in California, and I took those out on the road, and that solidified it. I was like, I love this guitar. Like, something comfortable about it. It's a star-shaped kind of situation, but it's a little more. It's got a little more edges to it than I think an Explorer, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but it's like you can sit with it. I mean, it's got this fin that comes out that can sit like right between your legs, and it's like weird. I know it's a weird thing to think about, but like it makes it comfortable. Like sometimes you try to play like a flying V or something. You can't really sit with that on your lap, so it's kind of uncomfortable. Whereas this, like, there's something about this dimension that I put into it, which wasn't something that I thought about when I was designing it, but when I see it in life, it's almost got these. It's so weird. It sits well, and you have these like two rests for your arms. It's just like, I'm like, wow, this is the lazy man's guitar. I'm into this.
Are you creating sort of a new brand called Evil Instruments?
Yeah.
Is this be one of a few you're trying to do in the future?
You right now that's the jackhammer model. I do have another one that I've designed that I just really want to see, like, if
How comfortable in expressing.
yeah. Well, design that. Well, I just want to see, like, if how well received the jackhammer is before I introduce the next one. If it, so we'll see.
You made me think, when you're saying like when you introduce something, there was a moment that happened a few years ago, which I'm interested to find out, some behind the scenes about, which is the internet went a bit wild when they thought you'd like completely changed your hair. And there's like, they couldn't double get. I got a message from a friend of mine who they had Coheeds Here to Mars featured in their wedding ceremony, and they'd message me like, have you seen what's happened to the hair? And then there was some gig who came out of the baseball cap who started pinwheeling, and then the hair falls out. It's wow. What did that happen accidentally? And you're like, oh, what? How? Why does people care? And then you thought, well, then we messed with it now. Like, what was that? What's going on there?
I think what I did was I had like put a hat on, and I had taken some of the hair in the back, and I kind of positioned it, in a way that it like looked like a style under the hat. I don't know what I did after that, like but I was trolling. So it kind of took fire. It like, got a little like, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna feed it. So I called my brother who works at a hospital in New York. And I said, said, you do me a favor, if you go outside and take a picture of yourself. He had shorter hair at the time. I said, do you do me a favor, take a picture of yourself, make sure the sun is in this position. And so he did, and I took a matching photograph, and with that same application that I used to collage, which I would have the guitar, I took my face and I imposed it onto his body, and incredible, real dick.
It's funny. How fun was that gig going out? I get a pizza. There's a few people here.
Actually, it was kind of weird. It was weird. It was weird, I think, because of the attention that got. Like, I always joke that the hair is like the fifth member of the band. It's the fifth Beatle or whatever. I don't know. It's it's a weird thing that plays with your psyche a little bit, but it's I like it. It's also part of like my personality. It's like what helps me, have the courage to be on stage sometimes, to like have it cover my face and not have to live in the reality of the attention and things like that.
Right. Versatile tool, I suppose.
Yeah.
And the album itself is very versatile. We're, again, at the time of this conversation, it's a few weeks ago until that's out. How do you cope with this odd in-between time?
It's funny because, once the record is done, and the record's been done for a while, then there's a whole nother layer of the creation of the record, which is the concept of, writing the story with my wife, having the story illustrated, making the relic, which is getting that manufactured, designed, whatever have you. So there's this whole other process that is really important to what we do. So by the time we get to this moment, I almost feel like the record is out. It's been with me for over a year. Even more so when you consider when the songs have been written, and all the work that goes into the concept. I mean, it is a tremendous amount of work writing that and having all of those illustrations. I mean, we really do go above and beyond when it comes to that. It's not just like a few pictures that, these are fully photorealistic, beautiful paintings that really immerse you into the world. And the relic this time around, which is the helmet, I don't know how we're going to top that in the next record, if we even go the route of a deluxe edition. It's a lot of work. It's really a lot of work.
Yeah, I guess to your point, you already formed it and essentially released it from your own mind and your own recordings, and now it's just waiting for the world to catch up.
Yeah, it's really.
Well done on the album. I'm looking forward to seeing what people think of that when it comes out as well. Thank you very, very much indeed for your time. So I enjoyed our time here. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
I absolutely loved having that conversation with Claudio. What an honor that honestly was. I've been enjoying his music since I was a teenager, so it was very cool to chat to him about some of the decisions behind the songwriting he does and how he thinks about his records over the years. Now, you may have noticed, hopefully you didn't, but maybe some of you who are very astute and tuned in did notice that the audio was not the cleanest audio I've ever had on this podcast as yet. Quick, not funny story. The mics that we had for myself and Claudio failed for that podcast recording. We had zero audio. Thankfully, I had a backup dictaphone audio recording and an iPhone some point during the conversation as a backup as well. And I have to give a massive, massive thank you to James Hyde, who sorted out and improved that backup audio to make it as clear as it was in the end for this episode and rescuing this conversation that was otherwise so close from just never being recorded fully. So thank you again very, very much to James for that. Thank you as well to the Coach House in Piccadilly for hosting our conversation there. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you want to see more interviews like this in future, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast, either on YouTube or what other platform you're currently enjoying this from. There are lots more interesting guests coming up in future. Hopefully you'll stay tuned for another one of these very soon. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening.